You get plenty of coverage of Oklahoma State football. You think you hear all the noise coming from Gallagher-Iba Arena when you get your Cowboy basketball news. But you don't.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
And there's a couple of Jordans here to fix just that. This is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast.
This could be a podcast. Anyone with a computer can make one.
Here are your hosts, Jordan Keene and Jordan Bishop.
Thank you very much. It is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast. Jordan King and Jordan Bishop with you here in the Triple Play Sports Production Studios. And a quick note here before we get going: if you're over on YouTube listening to this, or if the YouTube link is embedded in Twitter and you're listening via YouTube, I want to point this out. Somehow figured out how to make sure that we could get it figured out so you can now listen on iTunes. Now on the iTunes app. So you go to the iTunes app, pretty simple, search bar, Triple Play Sports Radio. It'll pop up. You'll see it's a black graphic with the orange writing and the Triple Play Sports logo and some information about it. And if you hit subscribe, every time we post a YouTube video, it'll update that feed with a video podcast. Now, the nice thing about this is you'll notice on YouTube, you have to keep it open on your phone. If you're listening to a YouTube video, and this is what I didn't like about YouTube, you have to keep it open. Through the iTunes podcast app, or through iTunes whatever, you can close your phone. So if you have an iPod, iPad, if you're still using like an iPod Touch, I still have an iPod Touch. I use it fairly frequently, I'm ashamed to say, but you can now do that on there. So it's really nice, and I'm glad we got that set up, Jordan.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that battery draining. I know that's a big thing with keeping that YouTube app open. So you actually listen to it when you're running or going around, just whatever you're doing. So actually on all fronts now. So you don't have an excuse not to listen to us.
No doubt about it. That's a good way to look at it. I appreciate that. Stick around, by the way, in the podcast. A little bit later on in the podcast, after we get a little women's basketball talk, we're going to have a women's basketball player. Jaden Hobbs will be joining the pod, and thanks to her for taking out a few minutes. We'll be courtside with her in just a few minutes. So I want to start off with women's basketball, as we have all year. Some women's basketball standings, and this is following. We're recording this on Wednesday. It'll be posted later on tonight. And normally it's Tuesday, but we ran into some problems with the Texas game last night. Jordan and I were both out covering that. So Baylor is 11-0. Texas is 10-3. They've just played 2 more games than Iowa State. Iowa State will have a chance. They are 8-3. 7-4 is West Virginia in 4th. 5th is TCU at 7-5. K-State is 6th at 6-6. OSU down to 4-8 and down pretty securely in that 7th spot. Kansas, Texas Tech both 2-8, 2-9, and 2-10. Respectively, and then OU in the cellar 1-10. So there you have it for the women's basketball standings. And again, this is probably a 3-bid league, Jordan. At the most, a 4th if West Virginia or TCU can make a little run here.
Yeah, West Virginia has some good wins on schedule. They have to do some more adding to that resume, more building onto that. But I think right now 3 secure, definitely, and that's the 3 ranked teams: Baylor, Texas, and Iowa State. OSU, a lot has happened since we last talked this pod. Beat OU for Bedlam, got some momentum going. Okay, maybe we can even this up back to 500 in the league. But before you go to Iowa State, if you get a win against Texas Tech and then against Texas, lost both of those. Lost in Lubbock, which was a bad loss, no doubt about it, and then lost last night to Texas, which was a close loss to a good team, but you really needed that win at home because now you got to go on the road to Ames, which is, like you mentioned, 8-3 and 3rd in the league, but they just haven't played 2 games like 2 more games like Texas has. So I still think the number two team in the league.
Same, I do too. And something that you and I both said the whole year was that this team, Iowa State team, we view as better than Texas. Now in the polls, Texas has over the course of the year been ranked higher than Iowa State. But in the first ranking of the top 16 seeds, Iowa State was ahead of Texas. They put Iowa State at the 15 spot. Which is where the AP and the coaches poll has Texas, I believe, right now. So, yeah, it's. I don't know if I qualify this as a bad loss. The bad loss came over the weekend at Texas Tech, but it's a disappointing loss because Danny Williams didn't kill you. She had 10 points, didn't really impact the game anywhere else other than, and she generally doesn't. She's a scorer, and you held her to 10 points on 13 shots. Latasha Jones had the game of the year for her, 13 points for her. Braxton Miller got back going to a certain extent. She has 14, 6, and 5. This was a game, you look at some of the statistics, and other than Shug Sutton, this is a game you should have won.
Yeah. I think that Shook Sutton caused a lot of problems. You mentioned this in postgame as well. Defensively, their physicality. Jamie Asbury, who's been on the pod before, she was 1 of 6 last night, didn't have a great game. The overall point guard position for the Cowgirls was shut out pretty much by Shook Sutton's excellence for the Longhorns on the other opposite side. So dealing with her all night long, and then also later on in the second half when Danny Williams was able to go open up that perimeter for them, and then the post just kept going at Cassie DeLapp, Miriam Nanu. Overall defensive nightmare for the Cowgirls.
I said this to the guys on last call after the game. I called into there, and I thought Shook Sutton's, not looking at steals, not looking at blocks. I thought her length really bothered Jaden Hobbs a little bit. She still got up 3 shots. Like I said, she had a shot with like 4.5 minutes to go that was about 90% down to tie the game. If that goes in, who knows what happens? Like you and I both said, they had gotten it to 3 about 7 times maybe in the last 5 minutes, and they could never quite push it over. A good job by Texas to continue to play and kind of weather the storm, but if that shot goes down and it's a tie game, anything can happen at home. So I thought Shook Sutton was definitely the MVP of the night for them. Jatari White was obviously in a lot of foul trouble, and then Joyner Holmes turned the ball over 8 times, and probably 4 or 5 of those were on travels. She just backed down without dribbling. It was kind of awkward to see.
Yeah, but that's the thing is you do well against those 2 starting posts. You think, okay, we're doing pretty well. They bring in Charlie Collier and then Olamide off the bench. And Collier, like Coach O'Tell mentioned, was one of the top players in the entire country. A UConn commit at one time. And that's just a luxury to have for Coach Karen Aston down there in Austin. So do well against the starters and then the reserves kill you. So it's just overall couldn't do much in the post. And then the guards, just Shook Sutton had control all night long.
Yeah, and I don't want to be overly negative because, again, this was a good performance against a good team. But some of the shooting woes that we saw from Braxton, again, she kind of broke out of it. But you think about her 4 points down at Texas Tech. And that was pretty much, if you're going to list one reason, there's never one reason for a loss, right? It's always multiple things that go wrong. But if you're going to point at one big thing, her having 4 points was a huge deal, and that's probably one of the reasons you lost that game. I asked them earlier in the season about fatigue. I don't think they liked that question. I don't think they didn't seem to answer it, they answered it how I thought they would, but I don't think they liked me asking it. I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing some of that, and like you said, we've seen it in the past. I think Bryn Gerlich is ready to play. I think she's given some pretty good minutes. Now, she's not going to be a star. She's not going to never make mistakes. You're going to have that. You're going to have that from any freshman that plays. But I think there's a huge difference between 38 minutes a game and even 35 minutes a game. And right now you're running Braxton Miller and Vivian Gray at 38 and 39 minutes a pop. And I think at this point it's reasonable to expect them to wear down a little bit. We saw it with Lauren Goodwin last year a little bit. So that's how I see it. I don't know how you see it. Again, I don't want to be super negative. I don't want to pretend like I know I have all the answers for a coach, but I feel like the rotation could maybe go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and Bryn, she had some great minutes against TCU in Fort Worth. Came in there, got a 3, got a charge, and I think she's somebody that, like you mentioned, she's gonna make some mistakes, but overall, she's not gonna be somebody that's gonna ultimately kill you on the plus or minus. You can just put her in there just to give Braxton or Vivian a quick breather, just to do something, just to be somebody on the floor, and not making mistakes, not necessarily do great at one thing or do really bad at one thing, but just to be there just so they can get some breathing time in there. Because I think, like you mentioned, and like I've seen the past couple of years, every February this happens with Braxton and Vivian a bit this year, Lauren and Kaylee last year, Kaylee the year before, and it was kind of just her, and then Brittany Martin the year before that. It wears on you, and this is a tough league, physical league, and it's just going to happen to you. It's nothing bad. It's nothing you can say, oh, we can be more in shape for. It's just what happens over a course of a season.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. And by the way, when I say, Bryn's ready to go, I'm not saying she's going to step in and play 25 minutes and score 12 points a game. That's not what you need from her. You just got to know that, yes, she can handle 10 minutes a game if you need that from her. Carly Wheeler can handle 8 minutes a game. And I think maybe you give something up defensively, probably a little bit, but you got to find minutes here and there, and it's a tough thing to do. I wouldn't want the job. That's why I'm sitting here talking about it, not on the sideline. I wouldn't want that job, and probably means I shouldn't be making suggestions. But it's something that I've seen that I think has made an impact, whether they want to admit it or not. So who knows? Yeah. Well, we had Jaden Hobbs on the podcast, and earlier before that game, she goes 0 for 3 last night, but she had a couple games in a row. Bedlam got her sparked up. We talked a little bit about Bedlam and what that means to her. And then 17 points at Texas Tech. That was a pretty good showing from her down there as well, and ball's starting to fall, and she gets hot. You get if you get 3 players that can score in that 15 to 20 range, and they do, you could get hot in the Big 12 tournament and maybe turn some heads. What's your one thing if you want to maybe make a tease or make a case for people to stick around?
Yeah, just to listen to her talk about how she's adjusted this year to her role. I mean, obviously her true freshman year got stolen because of the torn ACL in the exhibition game. Last year she was kind of still figuring out her role, had that knee brace. Now this year she knows her role. She knows what she has to do. Last night she started, but she's been coming off the bench mainly. She's kind of started to mature a lot as a player.
And we figure out who the real GOAT is. I'm just going to say that. Welcome back into the Cowgirl Coverage podcast. Jordan King and Jordan Bishop with you, and joined now by Cowgirl basketball player Jaden Hobbs. And Jaden, thanks for taking out a couple minutes and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So last couple nights, the ball's been falling for you. 17 points coming off at Texas Tech. And has there been a change in mindset at all? And if so, what has the change been?
I think I'm really just trying to be more aggressive. I think most defenses are focusing more on Braxton and Vivian right now, so I'm just trying to put myself in a position to knock down open shots and when they leave me open, and do whatever is best to help the team get a win. Is
it a case where you start hitting some shots and one thing kind of snowballs into another?
Sometimes. Other times I think it's just basketball, I think it's just how it rolls. Like I said, I'm just trying to do anything. I think my teammates are putting me in a good position and finding me at the right times and finding me when I'm open, so I'm able to hit those open shots and able to make those.
You've had to adjust the past couple of years, obviously to Lauren's game last year, to Braxton's game this year, and Jamie's game. What's it like trying to adjust to these different kind of point guards and try to find your own path, with so many players coming in and out?
It's been hard. It's been tough. It's something that I've had to focus on, finding my role, finding what I can do best and what I can do to help the team overall. But I think I'm adjusting fairly well. Like you said, Lauren was last year. I adjusted to her, and I'm adjusting to Jamie. So it's been hard, but it's been worth it at the same time.
What's the difference between those two players' games, do you think, trying to find your role alongside Lauren last year and then Jamie this year?
I think they're kind of similar. I think they're similar in a lot of ways. They like to attack the rim. And Jamie also shoots the 3 well. So I think I'm really just focusing on moving and putting myself in a position to where if she drives the ball, she's able to kick and find me open if they happen to double and help on her.
There's been some games where you've maybe taken a little bit more of a distribution role and handled the ball a little bit more. Is that something you're gaining some confidence in throughout the season as far as maybe playing the 1 a little bit more?
Well, I played the 1 in all high school, so I know how to play the role. I think I've just kind of been put in the position to play that role. Sometimes, last year I think Lauren had the role more, and then with this year, with Jamie and I alternating, that kind of gives me the chance to play that role. But also I can play the 2 guard if Jamie plays the 1 too.
How fun is it to be on a team where you have Braxton and Vivian? They're tremendous scorers, and then Jamie's coming along really well. Mm-hmm. Cassidy DeLapp in the post has played well. Everyone kind of moving forward and seeing growth in leaps and bounds. What's it like playing with so many other scorers on the floor and knowing that you can fill up the stat sheet pretty well yourself?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, opposing teams have to guard everybody. They can't leave one person open or that person will hurt them. So having everybody get better throughout the year and find their groove, it's something I haven't always had. So I haven't always been on the floor with 4 different scorers along with myself. So that's been fun, and it's been an adjustment as well, but I think it's going pretty well so far.
How would you rate how you've kind of grown as a player since coming here 3 years ago? I know your freshman year was stolen from you with that torn ACL, but the past 2 years of playing, how do you think you've grown as a player?
Probably I've had to learn how to become a bench player. at times, always. But I've never had to come off the bench, so that's been something that I've had to focus on to be able to come in and make a direct impact to help the team. That's probably, and then I need to focus on my defense still. Yeah, it's been something that I've been doing for the past 2 years. These girls are quick in this league. It's hard. At my position, they're normally one of the faster ones on the floor, so that's been an adjustment that I'm still continually trying to make and trying to get better at and gain more confidence in.
What's the difference between, obviously, you were so good at Alva. You won how many titles there at 3A, and going from there and then trying to adjust to playing defense at the Big 12 D1 level. What's the difference there to you?
It's completely different. I'm kind of the small school feel, so not everyone is as fast as these girls, obviously. So that's just been the adjustment, really, is just learning how much space I can give them, how close I can be without giving up ground. That's probably just the biggest difference.
Overall, though, you're coming out of Alva and one of the more renowned players in the state, at least in your year that you came out, and you get sparked and get going against OU. Is there a little bit extra against them every year? In state, we on the men's side, we always hear about it with Lindy Waters, the kid from Norman. Now you're not from Norman, but from in state, you know what this rivalry means. Right.
Like you said, being from Lindy is in the same situation. Being from Oklahoma, we understand what the rivalry is. I've been an OSU fan since I was in diapers, basically. So I understand how intense it is, how emotional it can be, and how competitive it is. And that's something that it makes me, and also I try to make my teammates realize more that I want that drive to win that specific game more than anything.
How does it feel to you that, because, obviously growing up, on the women's side, OU won a lot. They were making the Final Fours. You had the Paris sisters. But nowadays, you guys won 3 straight against them, and you've kind of taken a bit back in that rivalry. How does that make you feel to be part of this team that's getting OSU back on the map in terms of the Big 12 or the Bedlam rivalry?
Oh, it feels good. I'm glad to say that I helped contribute somewhat to getting us back on the winning track during the Bedlam series. So it's something that I'll always be proud to say that I helped somewhat get us back in the direction that we needed to be. So that's something that I'll tell my kids, I'll tell my grandkids, blah blah blah. So that's something that I'll probably always cherish.
A lot of times in rivalry games, people cherish it because they get overlooked by a program. This was a program you wanted to come to in OSU. You wanted to come here, as you said, your whole life. So where do you get your drive from to beat OU? Is it just what fans would imagine? Fans obviously want to beat OU because they hate OU. Where do you get your drive from? Because if you were recruited by, or if you wanted to go there and didn't get recruited by them, you'd have that kind of drive. Where does that come from for you?
Honestly, I think the fans drive us the most. I think that's what drives me the most. It makes me want to win because it's such an important game to them and our fan base, and it's important for us to be able to go out and perform for them and, have them come to more games and all that stuff. So I think that's probably where the biggest drive is just to play for the fans.
Like we talked last week post-game, that was your best performance, I think, since Tennessee in terms of scoring. And what was kind of the feeling, though, coming back and having that type of performance after, a couple of months of just being on the radar a little bit?
I felt good. I felt like I'm trying to be more aggressive the past couple games. And I think that's made a difference in our games with me getting up as many shots as I have lately. I think it somewhat helps out Braxton and Vivian and takes a little bit of the pressure off of them somewhat. But really I'm just trying to knock down shots when I'm open. And I think that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest way to help contribute to a team win.
I know there's different scenarios each game, each moment, but whenever you're brought off the bench and put in, what's your one thing you're thinking of right there to contribute immediately?
I think defensively, I just try my hardest to get my man stopped and keep my man from scoring, and then I think it starts there. I think it's like you said, a snowball effect earlier. I think if I start there, then it'll kind of flow in, and if I start making shots, it's just a game of flowing. So I think one thing will lead to another, and that's just kind of what I try to focus on.
When you think about, you kind of mentioned the momentum there. When Gallagher-Iba gets, even just half full, you can get some momentum rolling just based on the crowd. Overall, you talk about Baylor, you talk about Tennessee coming in earlier this year. Talk about the crowd presence, and when this place gets full, how fun is it to play on GIA's floor?
It's awesome. It's so loud. The crowd is the sixth man. They're one of the most important things we have playing in this arena. I think their presence is a big factor on opposing teams and how intimidating they can be. So I think I call it the sixth man of the year. I mean, that's what the crowd is. They help us in situations where we might not be doing something right, and they'll, start cheering and get us up, and we'll start flowing in the better direction. So I think they're so important, and they may not even realize how important they are.
We talked to Vivian Gray and Jamie Asbury on this before, and they're both newish players. It's Jamie's second year, but her first year playing. Vivian's first year here. What was the whole influx of players in the summer like, and the chemistry and the bonding like for the whole team, and to become a cohesive unit?
We all started hanging out right when we got here. It was something that chemistry just kind of flew, and it just kept progressing and getting better and better. I think the first time I really realized we're really close friends off the floor, we went to Tulsa to the children's cancer clinic or the cancer hospital, and on the bus ride there was one point where we were all just giggling and laughing and everything, and that was the time when I was like, this is going to be a really special year just because of our chemistry on and off the floor.
You guys do a lot of those outreach type things, and what's that mean to you that in your position you can have influence on somebody, you can brighten somebody's day just by even just being there, and what's that mean to you to have those type of opportunities?
It's very important to me to be able to give back to not only my community but in any community in Oklahoma or wherever that may be. Those type of things that we do are something that we'll always remember, their feelings we'll always remember, and being able to help somebody else brighten their day is something that is, like I said, is very important to me, just knowing that I can help them and get back to them.
Something we've asked a lot of the people on that join the podcast, away from the court, like, what is Jaden Hobbs? What is some of your hobbies? What do you do away from the court, like outside of basketball? We know you like to shoot the ball, and we know you're very capable of shooting the ball. But outside of basketball, do you have a favorite sport? A sport you like to watch, or anything away from the game of basketball?
Outside of basketball, I'm a very family-oriented person. I have lots of little cousins and all of these things, and they're starting to get to the age where they're in sports. So I try to go to as many games that I can make of theirs. They're very important to me. Family has always been important to me. I try to make everything that I can that I'm able to make. So that's probably the first thing. Another thing, I do sleep a lot. And I sleep a lot, and I hang out with my friends a lot. I mean, there's not really one specific hobby that I love to do, but I think just spending time with the people that I love is probably, you can call that my hobby.
How do you fit classes and practice all around your sleep schedule, though? It's very, very busy day.
Right, it is very busy. Right now, if there's any time that I can take a little nap is when I take a nap. At any time that I can get it in is when I try to do. Like you said, with practice and weights and class, there's not as much time as I would like. I don't always get to sleep in like I would like to, but that's okay. That's what I signed up for, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, we apologize for taking 15 minutes out of your sleeping schedule. But anyways, is there anyone, NBA player, college basketball on the men's side, women's NBA player, or women's player that you had growing up that you tried to model your game after?
I don't really think so. I don't ever remember just one sticking out. My favorite probably is LeBron James. I think he's incredible. He can play all 5 positions, but more importantly, he's a great teammate. And I think that's what makes him even better, and what makes him the GOAT. I call it the GOAT. But he's such a good teammate, and he's always involving them or encouraging them and letting them know, hey, we can fix this, hey, we can do this. He's very good at communicating, and that's something that I like about him.
Who would you say is somebody on your team that is that kind of leader on the bench and in practice that can say, hey, we can do this, and who's that type of LeBron-esque player for you guys?
I don't know if there's one specific that just sticks out. I think we all do a good job of keeping each other encouraged and bringing it together at times and trying to fix problems like that. I don't know if there's one specific person. I think we all do a good job of it.
You're obviously the best kind of three-point shooter right now, and on the men's side, that's the Thomas Zago of that team. If you had to go against Thomas, how do you think it would go in a three-point shooting contest?
We got to get this now.
I really don't know. Thomas is a really good shooter. I don't know. It's probably something we'll have to do before we graduate. We came in together as freshmen. So we're now in our 3rd year. We still haven't played horse or anything. So I don't know. He's pretty good. I don't know if I can beat him.
We got to figure out who the goat shooter is at Oklahoma State. So so you'll have to get that set up. One of the other things that we've kind of been asking people, in the classroom, what's your major? What are your future goals as far as off the court?
I am a health education and promotion major. I'm a junior right now, so I am set to graduate next spring. As far as after basketball, I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm kind of looking at programs to go into afterwards, whether that be medical sonography or dental hygiene, or I'm just kind of looking around and exploring my options. I'm not quite 100% sure what I want to do.
No wonder you're tired all the time. It seems like a lot of classwork.
Yeah, it is. Yep, it is.
Just, and we also asked, right now it's kind of, people are saying the best time in women's college basketball is getting better. What's it like to be playing in the sport right now with all the excitement around it, and what's it like to be a player right now?
It's fun. I mean, it's fun to know that there's a lot of little girls or little boys or whoever that are looking up to me and that look up to me as a basketball player, but hopefully as a person as well. I try to make myself off the court be more important than I am on the court for other people. I want to be a friend or a mentor, anything that I can be to other people and help give back to any community.
Anything else?
Well, I just saw one thing. So since you have been coming on the past couple of weeks in games, just what do you want to do the rest of the season? What's your goal, your personal goal, and then what's your team goal?
My personal goal, I just want to be able to help the team in whatever aspect I can, whatever they need me to do. I'm going to try and do that to my best ability. As a team goal, I want to make the NCAA tournament. I think that's everybody's goal. We always want to go to the highest level or to the biggest stage that we can go to, and I think that's the goal this year. So hopefully we can keep pacing on track to get that done.
Okay,
good.
That's all I got.
Perfect.
All right, well, thanks for taking out a few minutes. And
thank you.
We learned one important thing, that LeBron James is truly the GOAT, someone that
Yes.
agrees with me. It's not Michael Jordan. But that's a conversation for another time. We'll take a quick time out. Thanks again to Jaden for joining us, and Jordan will finish up the podcast on the other side.
Thank you.
There it is. That's the last guess we need. Last guess we need. She told us what we need to know. LeBron James is the GOAT.
Yeah, I can't. I've told my boss here before many times. Every time they bring up Michael Jordan, that 16 finals against the Warriors, where he brought the Cavs to the win, 4-3 down from 3-1. That is one of the best moments I will ever see. When I'm 80 years old, I'll remember that to the day that I die.
There you go. That's all you need to know, man. Jaden told us what we need to know. LeBron's the GOAT. He is. He's the GOAT. And I'm a Michael Jordan fan. I'm not biased. I'm clear mind here. He's the GOAT. So there you go. I'm sure we just pissed some people off by that. But anyways, women's tennis, we'll move on to that. They go to ITA Nationals out in Seattle and took a couple on the chin against a couple Carolina teams.
Yeah. North Carolina ended up losing last night to Georgia for the overall ITA team national championship, indoors championship. So not bad losses by any means. That shows in the rankings released today is the Cowgirls, even though they're 4 and 5, they're number 21 because they've had probably the toughest schedule in the country so far. And you can't shake your head at all at any of these losses. Those are really good, two really good teams. Just gotta learn from it and get better.
No doubt about it. And then so they get swept by North Carolina and then 1-4 loss to South Carolina. So I think we both think Coach Young have this team back on the right track, and going to be a fun outdoor season coming up for them as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of my favorite part of tennis season is outdoors. That is what I consider the true tennis season because you get to see, and I know people say, well, you could probably get more cleaner matches inside. You don't have to factor in the weather, but it just seems like you would think of, Wimbledon and all those. It's always outdoors, so it's good to see that. And I think now that the tough slate, the non-conference slate is over, the Cowgirls can get in a bit of a groove and hopefully, get some things going for them, get some chemistry going, and have some things, maybe some things to work on that you can use to go into the postseason.
Speaking of getting in a groove, man, how about this opening weekend from Oklahoma State? I would go back and replay it, but for the sake of time, I won't. Last week we both said, man, 4-1. If you're not 4-1 or 5-0 after this, could be a little bit disappointing first weekend for Oklahoma State. Then they lose to Illinois 7-4 in the opening match, or in the opening game. And it's like, I texted you, I was like, or you texted me, I think at first, you're like, oh man, and we both. I'll admit, I lost a little bit of faith. And then lo and behold, they beat Houston, take care of Sam Houston, take care of Illinois the second time, and then you text me on Sunday morning, and you're like, man, how about these Cowgirls? And I'm like, never, ever, this is a direct quote from the text, never let me doubt Coach Kenny G ever again. Never let me doubt him again. They beat number 13, University of Kentucky. They were, this team could have folded. This team could have given up and just said, you know what? Preseason tournament. This is a great team we're playing against. We'll get them later in the year. And they fight back from what was a 4-0 deficit and come back, walk off winner in the bottom of the 7th, 8-7.
Yeah, and I thought the same thing. I mentioned to my boss, Jason, it was a bit of a Dumb and Dumber moment for me because you go do this and totally redeem yourself, because all we heard all offseason was how great this team is, how they're going to be a world beaters, have a chance at the national title. That first game, they lose to Illinois 7-4. I'm like, oh, man. And Logan Simonette gives up 6 runs, and Coach Cheese is talking about how great she's improved. I'm like, oh, man. And then they go out that night, beat Houston, a team that was receiving votes, 5-1. And then the next day, Logan comes back. She does well pitching, so it's not clearly anything wrong. It's just talking to him yesterday at media availability. He's upset with the defense, but he says this is the first year he's ever had the team that they can have bad defensive games and still win games. And he says Logan had jitters. Callie Naomi had jitters. And, that's the freshman shortstop he's been talking about all year long. And that's a tough position to go in. She had the most errors, I think, of the weekend. But even she said that it was just jitters. And you can tell that I think those are kind of past right now, especially with the way they won that Kentucky game on Sunday. Having, I think, two back-to-back home runs. You had the Riley Bayless 2-run shot, then you had Sydney Springfield 2-run shot to win it. So that just shows that they can overcome even a bad loss to start the year, not in terms of the quality of the opponent, but just having to give up all those runs. I think you can overcome that, and the way they're playing right now, they feel really confident.
Yeah, this is I'll tell you this much, Jordan. It's a hell of a lot better to be gaining that or settling in. If you have those jitters, it is a heck of a lot better to be settling in to your role on this team 4-1 than 3-2, 2-3. If you let one of these other ones slip, Illinois could have slipped again. I mean, you could have lost that game again. So, I think it's interesting that, we're seeing early on this team how good it could be. And they move up, I think, 17th in the 16th or 17th in the ESPN.com rankings, which is the one that all my graphics are using, I believe. So, I mean, they move up, and the Big 12 looks pretty good right now. I'll read off the standings real quick. Oklahoma 5-0, nothing out of expectations there. Texas Tech 5-0. I said they're now my least favorite team in the Big 10 or Big 12 because they beat my Wisconsin Badgers. That, again, no one really knows that they actually had a softball program, but they do. Texas is 4-0. Oklahoma State 4-1 comes in at 4th right now. Baylor 5th, 3-2. Iowa State and Kansas struggled their opening weekends. Iowa State went 1-4, and Kansas 0-5 in their opening weekend. So that rounds out the softball standings to date. I want to talk about what's up next because St. Pete Clearwater Elite Invitational, you're going to be there. OU's going to be there. Texas going to be there. The best of the best from this conference. Now, you can throw Baylor in there and Tech, but the 3 of the top 5 teams in this conference, some might say the best 3, are going to this tournament, and you're going to face the best competition. OU's going to get a crack at number 1 overall, Florida State, this weekend. You're going to learn a lot about your team if you're Oklahoma State.
Yeah, definitely. Starting with that first game at 9 a.m. against LSU tomorrow, and going to be on the ESPNU, so nationally televised. Holly Rowe's going to be there, and it's a team that if you win this, they're number 7. I could see you jumping up to 13, 12, be the highest they've ever been. The highest they've ever been before this was 15, so that definitely will be a benchmark for Coach G.
Yeah, so I mean, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that they could sneak into the top 10 as well in some of the polls. Notre Dame, I don't have it on the graphic here, but they're inside the top 25 in the ESPN.com poll. And in every poll out there, or the two main polls out there, all the teams they're playing this weekend are receiving votes. Cal receiving some votes, Hofstra even receiving some votes, and Utah. I think Utah is in the two receiving the fewest votes. I don't quote me on that, but I did a little research on this, but you talk about Notre Dame, that's a team that OU is going to see. You're going to have some common opponents after this weekend with some of the Big 12 teams. You can kind of put a marker down if you play really well.
Yeah, and the thing about this is the players don't seem to be afraid of any of these teams. And talking to Riley Bayless yesterday, a super senior, she had missed last year with the ACL, she said they kind of just looking at every team as faceless right now. Like, they don't care what jersey they're wearing, whose logo that is, because they believe that OSU is a great team too, and the other teams should respect them like they're going to respect your LSU's and Notre Dame. So they're going to go in there and just play their game, and they're going to have no doubt that they can go in there and win those games.
You already beat an SEC team. We know that the SEC, top to bottom, probably the strongest softball conference, and we talked about that's where Kenny G came from, and talked about that's where a couple of these transfers have come from, one from LSU. So going to have some familiarity going down to Florida with this group.
Yeah, Cindy Springfield, she's the one who hit that 2-run walk-off against Kentucky, and she's the one that came from Baton Rouge. So she said she still has a lot of friends down there. She's happy to be playing this game. No ill will toward the Tigers, but just going to be overall a good, exciting game. And I'll be up early tomorrow morning watching that on the U.
What time's first pitch?
9 a.m.
Up early?
That's early for me, man.
I had to, man. I had to make poke a little fun at Jordan while I got him in here. So we'll finish it off here. It's going to be a fun weekend to watch. And again, I believe one of the Sunday games also on ESPN3 as well. So plenty of opportunities, like we said. Don't get a ton of opportunities to watch this team, and you're gonna get some. This weekend to be able to see this Oklahoma State Cowgirl softball team. Equestrian, they're going to get rolling this weekend at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their spring season started last week against Baylor. They lost down there in Waco. I actually didn't know about this, but our buddy from the radio station, Jeff Hopper, is going to it at Totosek Arena. So they're going to be going against SMU on Saturday. I think it's the only event in town, I want to say, because both basketball teams are on the road. Obviously, baseball starts up this weekend. They're on the road. Softball on the road. So this equestrian is the one thing in town. So yeah, go out there. If you're in town, go see what they're up to this year. Usually they're a pretty good team. I'll ask Brady Moore how they're looking this year, but I think that usually they are always the Big 12 champs, and just go experience something new. That's what Hopper's going to go do. So, and I credit him for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's an exciting weekend all around because, again, you get the best of the best for softball and stuff like that. So I believe women's golf has the weekend off. Yeah, they get back underway the 17th down in New Orleans, Louisiana. Lucky them, man. I get so jealous of all these golf teams, man, early on. Boys team, this is the only thing we're going to mention about the boys team. They were out in Hawaii. They went out there. Man, girls headed down to Louisiana. Then they go to South Carolina. Then they're over in Hawaii. Oh, man, Tempe, Arizona. Then they got to make the mundane trip over to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But by then it'll probably be 80s here in Oklahoma. So I wish I could swing a club a little bit better than I do, Jordan.
Yeah. I always love the South Carolina one they go to over there. I think whatever beach that is. What is that? What beach is it? Not Pebble Beach.
It's the Long Cove Golf Club. The Darius Rucker.
Myrtle Beach. That's what it is. Myrtle Beach. Yeah, Darius Rucker Intercollegiate, because he's a big fan, obviously, of it. And I talked to the SIDs who've been in charge of it before. Hootie and Blowfish. They've been out there a couple times. I think it's really cool. I think it's just a really cool thing to get to see.
Well, I don't know if you might be bringing up some bad. I don't know how Darius Rucker feels about his old band. I mean, he's kind of a solo artist now. So,
well, they got back together. It just happened recently. They're going on tour, so I might go see him.
All right. Well, anyways, he's apparently got his name on a intercollegiate golf tournament. Good for him. I mean, what else would you want? You get your name on a golf tournament. So that's women's golf. Soccer, again, they're going to get going here, I believe, at the start of March. Let me see. Yes, March 2nd. So not too long they'll be going on, and I'm excited to get out to Neil Patterson and catch some soccer this spring. I always said I wish the Big 12 had men's soccer, but it's pretty easy to forget about that when you have such a dominant, what should be a dominant girls team or women's team here for Oklahoma State. I think the Cowgirls are going to be tremendous next season, and I'm really looking forward to that. So Jordan covered the whole gamut of Cowgirl sports, and really good interview with Jaden, and found out who the GOAT was. So another good episode 6. Kind of hard to believe week number 6 doing this. So it's been a pleasure so far on my end.
Yeah. I think we have plenty more. We haven't even scratched the surface of what we can do. So plenty more, and everything's just right in the mix of all the seasons pretty much, and even soccer you mentioned, which is fall sport, has its spring season coming up here next month. So everything going on right now.
Yeah, really exciting, and we appreciate everyone listening in. Again, if you haven't yet, maybe make a little tap that little podcast icon that maybe you've never tapped before on your iPhone, and I'll tell you what, it's a blessing if you haven't done that yet and want to listen to the Cowgirl Coverage podcast, the premier coverage for Cowgirl athletics. For Jordan Bishop, thanks again to Jaden Hobbs for joining us. I'm Jordan King. This is the Cowgirl Coverage podcast on the Triple Play Sports Podcast Network.